Good morning. I am excited to get out this quick teaching. I'm going to call it the love of the Father. So, oftentimes, I believe that we don't really understand the full depth of love that there is for us, and the full magnitude and the breadth and the depth and the width and the height of the love that the Father has for us. So it's so important to understand the way that this love is expressed and the ability to truly accept it. Because accepting love into our hearts, into our minds, into our bodies is truly the transformational power of having a spirituality, of having a relationship with reality and God. So I want to talk about it a little bit. I'm going to talk about it in like kind of two different contexts. The first context, I'm going to talk about it as the love the Father has for us. And then also the context of how we can practice exemplifying that love to other people. We're called on the spiritual journey to take the love that we are receiving and give it to others. As it was given onto us, give on to others, right? So, jumping right into it here, the first facet of God's love is allowance. So, what's interesting about this is that God allows so much to happen because He honors us, because He allows us to be where we are, how we are, and He doesn't control us. So that's the opposite of allowance, is control. So He allows us to make our mistakes, and we learn from those mistakes and we grow, and ultimately we realize that we want to be closer with Him. We want to be closer with love. We want to be closer with peace, be closer with presence, because that's truly what we were created for, is to have that relationship and to live in that safety, to live in that security of the presence. So getting into allowing in our intimate relationships and with our friendships, do we truly allow people to be who they are? Do we truly allow people to make mistakes? Do we truly allow people to change after their failures? Or do we feel like we're attached to what they're doing or what they're not doing or what they're saying or they're not saying for our own sense of well-being, for our own sense of efficacy and our own sense of confidence in ourselves? Because oftentimes we're so stuck in trying to control other people and not just allowing them to be how they are, allowing them to have their opinions, allowing them to have their beliefs, allowing them to have their perspectives. And instead of thinking like they're wrong or like I need to be right, coming at it from like a place of curiosity, coming at it from a place of connection, coming at it a place from love, which is unifying rather than dividing. And so allowance, super important. Acceptance. This is an interesting one. So God accepts us exactly as we are. And you could look at this even as like reality, like the holding space of reality, like this present moment that you're in. Is it telling you to be any different than you are? And the answer is no, it's not. We may be telling ourselves that we need to be different than we are, but that's like us with us. Whereas God's acceptance for us is unconditional, and this is all of the time, and this can be hard for people to truly accept, because God loves us so deeply, right? So even those parts of us that we feel ashamed about, right? Whether it's mistakes that we've made in the past, whether it's our sexuality, whether it's trauma that we have a hard time working through, whether it's our anxiety or our fears or our insecurities or our limiting beliefs, or this general sense of like contractedness that we have in life and like need for things to be different, our clinginess, our aversions and our avoidances and our cravings, our fears and desires. God accepts all of that unconditionally. He loves that all unconditionally, and allowing that acceptance into those wounded parts of us can actually transform them into something beautiful. Like you could look at it as like the pressure from coal is love. Love is the pressure to the coal that turns it into the diamond. But oftentimes we don't allow love to shape and mold us. We feel like we need to control the process. So what about other people in our lives? People in our lives that are difficult sometimes to accept, right? Sometimes they're not what we want them to be. Sometimes they're not what we thought that they were. Sometimes we really feel like they're deluded, they're ignorant, they're wrong. Yet, can we accept them? And can we show them the love that we are shown? And I think that's a huge part of maturity and a huge part of recognizing a deeper love, a more unconditional love. And this is a very freeing, very liberating type of love. It's a love that doesn't have attachment, right? It's love that people will leave our lives, people will come into our lives, but we can hold that namaste for them. We can hold that space for them to be where they are, how they are, and accept. So attention. This is a very interesting one. So God gives us completely undivided attention all the time, 100% of the time. He's completely attentive of you. And you could think about that as the being or the aliveness that permeates your being. And that aliveness never leaves you. And that undivided attention, if we want to tune into it, like to give our attention back to God, that's a beautiful relationship. And that's the here and now, that's the present moment, because God is always here and now, undivided attention. So when we think about that, oh man, I just feel that connection right now. Well, when you think about attention, when we're in our personal relationships or our other relationships, how undivided is our attention, right? Because I know for me, I'm thinking about what I'm going to say next, right? What I'm going to say back to them. So I'm not truly listening. I'm going to be thinking about what I'm going to be doing after this, how what they're saying is not the most important thing right now. Or I'm going to be thinking about my past, or I'm going to be thinking about my day, or I'm going to be thinking about I, me, mine. And like love, the connection between love and selflessness is very profound, right? So undivided attention is almost like a level of selflessness. So you can see God as a very selfless, benevolent being, and that's an expression of love, selflessness. So when we don't make our conversations and our interactions about, getting or taking or what's this person, like the value that they're adding to me, but it's just like, no, I'm going to give them my undivided attention. I'm going to give them my undivided love. That's beautiful. That's a very beautiful way of interacting with the world. And namaste. So affection. This is interesting, right? So it's like sometimes we can allow that acceptance. Maybe we can give ourselves attention. We can give ourselves allowance, and we should have these relationships with ourselves as well, right? So I put it in the context of God to us, and then also us to other. But now that I think about it, to clarify, it's also us with ourselves, right? So we also need to love ourselves. We need to come into that love union and that love perfection, right? So when you look at it in terms of affection, God has a heart that is very affectionate. Reality is very affectionate towards you, but oftentimes we're so distracted, we're so lost in our own thoughts, we're so lost in our own busyness and our own sort of doing and getting, that we don't slow down and bring being into the doing and the getting, and we kind of lose that sense of affection, or we lose that sense of tuning into the beauty of life and the affection that we have in the present moment, and also allowing that affection into the parts of ourselves that we're critical of, that we're judging in ourselves, is very powerful, right? It's profound. And then affection for other people, right? So the time that people need our affection the most is when they're at probably their most difficult, right? Or they're at their most weak, they're at their most vulnerable. And that's oftentimes when we're kind of inclined sometimes, if we're a little bit more of the macho man kind of masculine approach to relationships, and just sort of let's get it done, here's the problem, let's fix it. We can kind of skip that step of affection, right? So taking that little bit more feminine approach to begin, but then you need to balance it out with obviously working through the things and moving forward as well. But a huge part of that is affection, right? A huge part of that is just this deep sort of acceptance and love for people in their weakness, in their vulnerabilities, in their failures, in their mistakes. And that goes so far, so far for people. And that's why God's approach for us is that. And that should be our approach for ourselves. And then the last one that I'll talk about here is appreciation. So even in our humanness, let's say, even in our imperfection, there is an appreciation for us. And there is a appreciation for, I would say, the openness to the relationship. And even if it's a closedness to the relationship, because God's love is so unconditional, It's so all permeating. It's so all knowing. It's so benevolent that there's just no there's no way out of it. It's you're caught in God's love, and even mercy. Like talking about God's mercy, that's another facet I guess you could kind of look at. Is that in the end, it's pure love. It's pure love. You have nothing. You have nothing to worry about. You have nothing to worry about. In the big picture. In the short picture, there's lots of things for us to worry about. But let's bring that allowance of ourselves, that acceptance of ourselves, that attention to ourselves, that affection to ourselves, that appreciation to ourselves, connect with reality, connect with others through this place. And that will make the worries and the struggles a little bit easier and a little bit more bearable. And remember to transform your suffering into wisdom. Namaste.